as it sits, the Astros are now 4-10 on the season. They just got swept by the Royals after the Royals beat them 13-3 last night. So, KJ, do you think it's time to press the panic button in Houston?
I would have the lid open. You know what I mean? If you know the meme where the guy's sweating and he's trying to determine which button, they should have the lid open. You may remember or may not remember, but I usually start my sample size after 27 games because you can divide the season by 6, and that's 27 game clips. So if they're almost halfway into that 27 game clip and they've only got 4 wins, somewhere along this season they've got to go like an amazing 10-2 run a couple of times to make up for this mess. Plus, you've got Texas there, and I think Texas is going to be right there with them. And Seattle is still nothing to sneeze at. So I panic button push it, not yet, but I would have the lid open and determining if I'm going to use my pinky finger or my thumb if I do have to hit it.
Yeah, I think for the Astros, I think it's still a little too soon. And you've got to remember this. Just because a team doesn't win their division in the regular season doesn't mean it's all over. Like, look at the Phillies last year. They didn't win their division and they went further than the Atlanta Braves. They beat them, in the NLCS or the NLDS, I should say.
Right.
So I think this is an Astros team that has enough veteran presences that I'm still going to assume that they will be a contender come this postseason. Because if it's a wild card game, who wants to face the Astros? Probably no one. So I am holding out hope, or at least you root for them to fail and then you play them in the futures market, because maybe you get a discount on a team that's been to the ALCS every single season since the year 2017. That's how good the Astros have consistently been.
Is there a statistical chance that the Astros will be chasing wins towards the end of the year just because of the probability numbers? Like I was telling Chelsa earlier, like they may have to have a run of like 20-7 just to make up for this bad start, just to kind of start to break even. Like, what are the chances that we might be looking at the Astros chasing wins around once they get to game 150, where they're going to have to be almost like 10-1 or 10-2 to finish out the season just to be able to potentially be a wild card team?
Yeah, so obviously digging yourself into a hole like the Astros have is never ideal. You never want to have to pick up those wins. That being said, I don't think the Astros are in such a bad position right now where they have to worry. They're a good enough team where they are going to rebound. The BatX thinks their chances of the playoffs are 67% right now, which is lower than they were at the start of the year, but that's still, one of the higher percentages in baseball. So they're good enough where they can go on that 10-1 run. And, they're experiencing kind of that bad variance right now, but it's very easy over a course of a long season to have a stretch of that good variance where they just go on a winning streak. And I think at some point that will probably happen for them.
Right. It's a 162 game regular season. And plus, we've seen this with so many teams in baseball where they get hot down the stretch and you don't necessarily have to win your division to make a deep run in the postseason, as we've seen with the Philadelphia Phillies. All right. So you've given us some of your plays today, and I've got to ask you about this one because I think it's kind of a hot take. Anytime you take the Rockies on the money line against anybody, especially Kevin Gausman pitching for the Blue Jays, somebody who has had quite a bit of success in the major league. So please sell us on Rockies winning a game today.
Yeah, so I'm not going to tell you that, I think the Rockies are going to win outright here. Like, I think they're the better team. Like, clearly they're not. But I do think their money line is probably the best bet you can make today in terms of expected value. You can get it around plus 205 right now, which implies about a 32% chance to win this game. Whereas my projections think they're more like a 36, 37% chance to win. So that's a pretty significant edge. This is one of those bets that tends to be profitable over the long term if you make enough bets like this, because there's some things that the market and the public just tend to overrate and underrate. Like, the public doesn't want to bet on the Rockies because the Rockies are bad. We all know the Rockies are bad. No one wants to bet on them. And so you're actually offered a little bit of value if you're willing to. They're facing a really good pitcher in Kevin Gausman. The market likes aces. They don't want to bet against aces. So we kind of have this double, this double kind of double whammy here where It's a bad team against a good pitcher, and the market's like, the books are like, no one's going to want to bet on the Rockies here, and that's why the line is what it is, because it's shaded too far to the other side, and we want to bet the Rocky side because that's where the value is. It's also worth noting with Gausman that he's coming off an injury in the spring. He's not fully built up yet. He'll probably only go 85 or 90 pitches, so this is not going to be a start where we see Gausman dominate and go 7 or 8.
Cam, you brought this up earlier, how there's a lot of parity in the NBA this year. I think that especially is the case out in the West. Is there a team kind of lurking in the shadows that you think could possibly give the Nuggets a run for their money?
Oh, that's why you're the great Chelsa messenger, because you were reading my mind, because I wasn't able to answer this in my first question in terms of, is there another team odds-wise to win it all that has my interest? But there is a team in Dallas that has been playing phenomenal basketball, won 16 of the last 18. We are seeing Luka Doncic, who, in my opinion, should be NBA MVP. I don't like Nikola Jokic being NBA MVP because part of that is just, fatigue with it. But then also you just want to give love to a guy that has really carried the Dallas Mavericks throughout the season and been so consistent and powerful when it comes to just scoring. He leads the NBA in scoring, but then also doing other things like rebounding the basketball and finding his teammates. So you have that dynamic in Luka. But then also you have the dynamic of Kyrie Irving. And so we have to really give these two guys credit of coexisting on the court, and not only coexisting, but being elite together on the court. And that's something that a lot of people couldn't see last year when those two guys were playing. They were saying, okay, well, who's going to pass the basketball? Are there enough basketballs to go around for these guys to not only get their average, but to be impactful on the offensive end? But we're seeing that now, and I think it's because of the other guys around them, like a Daniel Gafford and a P.J. Washington that they pick up after the trade deadline. So the Dallas Mavericks, for me, are that team that could really challenge the Nuggets. Now, their road to the Western Conference Finals and even the NBA Finals will be tough. And so right now, what I'm looking at on BetMGM for the Mavs to win the West is at plus 900. I would sprinkle some money down on that because you're having a team that will face off against the Clippers in the first round. That's the only playoff matchup that we have set right now in the 4-5 situation. I think Dallas survives that. But after that series, KJ and Chelsa, they're going to face off against the Denver Nuggets. So you would hope that maybe you're not going into a 6th or 7th game against the Clippers to try and get that done. And that's easier said than done, understanding that Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and just all the other pieces like a normal pile that Ty Lue has at his disposal will not make it an easy series. But I'm looking at the Dallas Mavericks as that team. If anybody can knock off the Nuggets, it's the Dallas Mavericks because they have just problems you can't solve offensively. How do you stop Luka? How do you stop Kyrie? It's such a great attack that Jason Kidd has, and they can play half court, they can play full court, they can play in transition. They're top 10 in the NBA in terms of pace. So Dallas would be that team for me, especially at plus 900 right now in BetMGM.